Ladies and gentlemen, if I can just remind you of the rules for remote attendance before we start the meeting properly, because I can see that we do have a couple of members who are joining us remotely. So just to remind you that you need to be on mute at all times until you are called upon to speak. And if you are then called upon to speak, you unmute yourself and then return yourself onto mute as soon as you've finished speaking. If you do want to speak, if you want to ask a question or make a comment at the relevant part of any debate, please raise the virtual hand and then we'll be able to call you. You may be, it's quite difficult for the mayor to keep you in the right order. So we will try and call you in order by looking at when any hands are raised, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Again, it's slightly different voting for you because I will have to ask you to call out your vote because we can't record your votes in any other way. If you do, for any reason, have to leave the meeting, you'll need to indicate that for us, either by putting a message in the chat or by raising your hand and indicating to the mayor that you have to go. But you do need to be aware that if you do not hear all of the debate, then you may not vote on any matter that you haven't been able to be present for the whole of. When we come to the recommendations, I will invite you to vote verbally, and I will be asking everybody in the chamber just to vote by the electronic means. And I'll remind everybody again that the buttons on your console, the one on the left is to vote in favour, the one on the right is to vote against, and the one in the middle is to abstain. I think, oh, the only other thing I need to say to those who are remote is that you do need to be visible on screen at all times. The only time that you would be able to turn off your camera is if you were in danger of losing connection because your connection was poor. But at that point, if you could let us know, but otherwise you will need to remain visible on screen at all times. Mr. Mayor, I think that's everything. If I hand back over to you to open the meeting formally.
Monitoring Officer. Prynawn da, croeso I cyfarfod, diolch I chi gyd am ddod. Good afternoon, welcome to today's full council meeting of Wednesday, 19th of April 2023. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. Democratic Services, have we... Thank you very much, Mayor. Anybody else like to give apologies? That is it, is it? I've got hands raised, I think, online. Councillor Scott Thomas. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Gibbs.
Councillor Gibbs. I thought it looked like a yellow. Councillor Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not that ugly as Scott, so I couldn't hear Democratic Services, but I'm not sure. David Isaac has sent his apology, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. They did. I don't think the microphone was on over there. Councillor David Hughes, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. That's it for apologies. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Is this for the last one or the one coming up, guys?
This is declarations of interest.
Yeah, okay. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992 relating to council tax, the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Members' Code of Conduct. Are there any members who wish to make a declaration of interest for any of the agenda items being discussed today? Councillor David Jones.
Agenda item 6, I own a property that potentially affected by non-domestic rates.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Item number 6, same as Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint Thomas. Councillor Clive Tuvey.
Item number 6, the non-domestic rates. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Tuvey. Councillor David Hughes.
Same one, Chair. I work for a company that.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes. Councillor Lee Davis.
Same again, Chair. Item agenda 6. I work for the Leisure Trust that receives that.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Lee Davis. I think that's it. Nobody else is indicating. Lovely. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, the way forward. I am delighted to welcome Mr. Mel Jayu, the chairperson of the Standards Committee here at Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. And I think Mr. Julian John is on the agenda as well. The vice chairperson for our Standards Committee, who will be giving a presentation tonight on their work, what they will be doing going forward, and the standards expected of elected members, I believe. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. And may I take this opportunity to thank full council and for the leaders of both parties for inviting me to come along just to have a chat. Mayor, it won't be a presentation. First of all, may I apologise. For those who don't know me, my name is Mel Jayu, and as Mayor has said, I am the chair of your Standards Committee for Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. Unfortunately, my vice chair, Mr. Julian John, I'm looking around to make sure he hasn't arrived. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to attend tonight. So on that score, I send his apologies. What I want to do for the next, and I promise I'm not going to bore you with standards. I could bore you with standards for hours and hours. I'm not going to do that tonight. All I want to do is set the tone. And it's not so much a presentation as an address on perhaps remind people how standards used to be, what it's like now, and just where we're looking to go in the future. And this is not my take on it. There's been some legislation that's impacted on how standards is going to change and has changed. So let's just set the tone. Hopefully, not one of you will appear in front of me or your Standards Committee during the life of this local authority. I just hope that's the case. However, being a pragmatist, I suspect at some stage, because in the nature of the business that you're in, people will make mistakes and will do breaches of the code of conduct. So I'm just setting the tone for what you can expect if that should happen. Traditionally, and my background, for those who don't know me, I was in 34 years with South Wales Police, where in each one of the ranks that I held up to the rank of Assistant Chief Constable, I was involved in standards and in charge of the standards for the South Wales Police. For the last 8 years prior to coming to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, I've been the chair over in Rhondda Cynon Taff's Standards Committee. That was for 8 years. So as you can see, my background, not just in enforcement of the law and policing, has also been in this world of standards. So I would just like to be able to say, looking you all in the eye, that I do know what I'm talking about. And I have experience, quite a lot of experience in dealing with standards issues, both in local authority, policing, and within the judiciary in Wales. So I just want to set the tone there. Now, traditionally, standards has been very reactive, i.e. someone breaches the code of conduct, and then the structure comes in, the processes, the ombudsman, and standards in investigations. Ultimately, if it is a serious transgression and there's evidence to support that, and may I say there's always has to be evidence to support it, because in any issue, allegations are easy to make, but they have to be supported by evidence to get the requisite standards here and that ultimately we would go to. But it's been reactionary, because everything has been, it happens, we investigate, and then there's some process that follows. Now, there's been a piece of legislation that's come out recently as a result of a report by a Professor Penn, which has indicated the best way the standards committees can function, and to the people that they represent, i.e. us and you, because we are your standards committee, is to take a proactive stance. And that proactive stance is about doing what I'm doing now, talking about standards, making sure people understand standards, that they actually have read, and I'm sure I'm not talking to anybody in this room who hasn't read the code of conduct, because as elected members, that is the standards that expand. The standards that we expect is not that you work to the code of conduct, that you work from it. And it's a place where it's the only thing that you consider to be appropriate. And the standards and the code of conduct, as I see it, and I'm sure I would hope you to see it, is it just a fair and honest way to come and do the particular role that you're performing? Impartiality, with dignity, with respect, in non-prejudicial manner. I'm sure it just makes sense. However, on occasions, individuals do transgress and they do cross the line. And I'm always hoping that it's never with intent, that it's just a mistake, but sometimes it's not. So I just want to reinforce the fact now that as a standards committee in Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, we are a very proactive team that is looking to not just engender good quality, but also be the ambassadors for what is appropriate and how your conduct as individuals should be continued with on every meeting you attend and every time you represent this particular local authority. As a result of that, some of the changes have been, one major one is the whole report is focused on leadership. And that doesn't just include the leadership of the leaders will have a specific responsibility, but the report indicates that every one of you as elected representatives are leaders for the community. So it isn't about looking at a leader and thinking there's Darren and Geraint there who are the leaders of the requisite parties and the deputy leaders who sit alongside them. Every one of you, and it's my expectation as the chair of standards, are leaders and ambassadors for that code of conduct and appropriate behaviour. What the leaders, however, the elected leaders will have to do is, we have already started, and may I take this up to thank them for the way that they've approached this process. I have already met with them, with my vice chair, and we've had very productive conversations in relation to what our expectations, not just me, but the leaders themselves, for appropriate, the way we expect our code of conduct and our standards to be upheld every day. And during the course of this year, at the end of the year, I, as the chair of the Standards Committee, will have to submit an annual report. But also the leaders will have to submit a report to me on what they have done as individuals to be the ambassadors of this code of conduct and standards, to progress the matter, to deal with issues, and basically to be, can I call it this, my able lieutenants, even though they've got significant responsibilities, but when it comes to the code of conduct and the work of standards, to be doing things within the party with their deputies to make sure that everybody is on script and appreciates what is required of them. And I just want to say this now loud and clear. If anybody's got any concerns or any, should we say, they need the code of conduct demystified for them, then please contact me direct through Caris, the monitoring officer. Because what I don't want is anybody appearing in front of the Standards Committee or anybody getting involved in any investigation or any issue involved as a breach of code of conduct, and they say, well, I didn't know what it meant. I know it seems silly, and I'm looking at you as all as mature elected representatives now, but I just want to be brutally honest and say, if anybody's got any doubt as to what is required when it comes to living and breathing the world of standards as a locally elected representative, please tell me, through Caris or through your leaders, and I will personally come and speak and demystify what standards means and the expectations of what we require. And so there's an offer to you, and please take that offer if you need it, because what I do not want is any of you to be involved in anything as a breach of code of conduct as a result of perhaps, I'm not going to use ignorance, but a lack of understanding. It is vitally important. Having said that, if as individuals you understand and you get it, what I'm now looking for operational delivery of those standards. And that means my expectation as the chair of your standards committee through your leaders is that what I'm expecting is every one of you as elected representatives to come to your committees or to do any duty that you're performing for this local authority and understand that I do everything with respect, with integrity, with transparency, in an appropriate way, and everything that is expected of you by the people that elected you. And also for the people, and I'm not talking about politics here, parties. What I'm on about is, I'm all right, I'm looking at Mayor, there are 30 elected representatives in this local authority. I'm expecting 30 elected representatives to uphold the values of the code of conduct and standards that are expected. And the issue of politics and parties doesn't bother me at all. I'm not a politician. I am here to address and to lead standards on your behalf. I've set the tone that what I will expect is when we review any issues that are brought to me as the chair of your standards via the monitoring officer, if complaints or issues are raised, as you know, it's so easy to make a complaint about another individual's standards of behavior. But what I'm also expecting is a little bit of maturity to appreciate it in this world that you operate in. There will always be a thrust and parry of ideas and views and opinions. Respect those. I am sure there's not one person comes into any committee in this local authority with the intention of saying a bad thing, doing a bad thing. I'm sure that's the case. Just as my expectation is when people come into a committee that they're not looking to pick fault in every indiscretion or every mistake that anybody makes. There's a huge difference between making a well-intentioned mistake than going in and making an intentional faux pas which compromises that individual or the party. So please, what I'm looking for is maturity and understanding. There will be, I look around this room, and because of my background, I know lots of the individuals here, and I can see a huge range of, there are a lot of senior elected members who really know how the local authority works, but let's respect the newer members who perhaps don't understand the dynamics as well as some of the senior members. And what my expectation is that the senior members of whatever party should act as mentors to those younger members to make sure that their time or their introduction into the world of local politics is as seamless as possible. What I don't want, I'm talking as a chair of your standards, my expectation that people come into committee meetings and they are frightened to speak because they're frightened to make a mistake or say the wrong thing at the wrong time because they'll get in trouble. You know, I would expect that people have the, what's the word I can say, the confidence to come in representing the people that voted them in. And even though they might make a mistake in what they say, the mistake they made is done not with intent, but by a little bit of inexperience. I'm just setting that tone because it's not the role of the Standards Committee to jump on everybody just because they made a mistake. I would like this local authority to be a learning organisation, a compassionate organisation, but a very, very mature organisation that's playing out of its skin. And the only way you're going to do that and really play to your full potential is for everybody to have the confidence to speak and to make that mistake in an area that's safe. Now, what I won't expect, what I won't condone, however, is certain indiscretions, whether relate to finances and all, because those are the serious things, you know, whether it's be planning, so things like making sure there's no, if you're doing it for personal gain, there will always be a problem. But if you make a mistake, there will always be, shall we say, an understanding based on the evidence. And if mistakes are made, what I'm expecting that if there is mitigation, that mitigation is brought to our attention. Now, I said I can go on forevermore and looking at what I've just spoken for just over nearly 15 minutes. It was always my intention to be out of that door in 15 minutes. So what I'm going to say, it's over to you. I think the message is now clear. You have got a strong, proactive standards committee that I want to be the very best, not just in Wales, but the very best in the UK. We got a good start for 10. We got the support of the leaders of both parties. I know we got the support of the mayor. We've certainly got the support of the people in this room. I'm looking around now. I'm sure there's nobody's going to shout me down and say you've got it all wrong, Mel. The truth of the matter is, this is my opportunity to speak to you in a very open, proactive way, and I hope you'll take what I've just said in the best possible way possible, because it's done with the best of intentions. So all I would say, Mayor, if I can, if anybody's got any questions of me now, please. And I know there are members of my your standards committee in this room, around this room, and I know we've had these private conversations, but we just will need to get this right, because when local authorities get it wrong, it's usually because standards are not front and center of the way they conduct their business, and I just want it to be. And I give you my word as your chair of standards, and if Julian, my vice chair, was here now, and all the members of South, we will deal with issues totally impartially, right? There'll be no favor of any particular individuals or everybody will be treated on the merits of what's in front of us and with the intentions of which issues are said. So I'll leave you with that. If I'm allowed, if anybody wishes to raise any questions now, if it's within your gift, they can do so.
Thank you, Mel. First of all, just make a comment, if that's all right, before we bring in any members. Mel, thank you for that. I think what you said is clear. And as you said, anyone who is in any doubt can come and see you.
Yes.
And just lastly, I do hope I never find myself in front of you at a standards committee. Councillor Lisa Mitten.
Mr Mayor, Mel, as the chair of a committee that I am fortunate enough to sit on, I just want to thank you and echo all of the sentiments that you've just outlined to all of our colleagues here. Reiterate the point about supporting newer members as well, but also that importance in relation to integrity and those who unknowingly may have made a mistake. And as you said, impartiality is of the utmost importance. As a member of Standards Committee, I echo and endorse everything that you've said and welcome the joint training that we're all having that's
Yes.
been proposed and Michelle has sent to us for the 15th of June as well. So I think that's important that we can all share really good practice and do, as you've outlined, have a committee that really is proactive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. As I say, as Councillor Mittens just said, I'm a great believer in cross-fertilisation of ideas. So we will be having joint training. I will assure you that your Standards Committee will be as switched on as it can be, will be as much fit as it can be, and will be as aware as it can be, but also working in partnership with other local authorities so that there is a level of standards and everybody's treated in similar ways, if I may share that, and again, sharing those ideas. So once again, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Lisa Mitten. Councillor Darren Roberts.
It's not a question, it's a comment, Mr Mayor, is that okay?
Fine.
Yep, thank you. Yep, thank you, Mel. Obviously, you alluded to it earlier that myself, Geraint, met with yourself and Julian previously, and your words and mine, it was a very productive meeting. It's clear that your honest, pragmatic approach to standards clearly means that the Standards Committee for the local authority is in safe hands, and for that I echo the Mayor's comments. I wish I don't want to be in front of you either. So, but no, thank you for your support, your time, your effort, and clearly moving forward, we are in safe hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darren Roberts. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Just a comment from me as well. Obviously, Julia must have caught public transport, today to try and get you, and we're all suffering at the moment with the trains and the bus services. So that's why he's not here, I suppose. But Mel, you've had an unblemished, successful career, through the police, 34 years, as you said, and you were the Ted Hastings. If anyone watches Line of Duty, the Ted Hastings, I suppose, of the South Wales Police Force. So I know there'll be no stones unturned if there's a problem. I understand that. So no, I welcome your appointment and looking forward to working with you. Good.
Thank you, Geraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint Thomas. Any other members? Nobody else is indicating. Mel, again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting if you don't want to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, agenda item number 4, to approve as accurate the minutes of previous meetings, which covers the following reports. Full council meeting of 8th of March 2023, cabinet meetings of 27th of February and 8th of March 2023, Standards Committee of 3rd of March 2023, Democratic Services Committee of 27th of March 2023, Regeneration and Public Protection Scrutiny Committee meeting of 7th of March 2023, Corporate Support and Resources Scrutiny Committee meeting of 14th of March 2023, Neighbourhood Services Countryside and Planning Scrutiny Committee of 13th of March 2023, Learning and Local Government Education Service Scrutiny Committee meetings of 7th of February and 6th of March 2023. I believe the Council Leader Geraint Thomas will be moving this report.
Happy to move the minutes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint Thomas. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Has any members got anything to raise in relation to the minutes? Okay, no members indicating. Members, can we put to the vote then, please?
And can I then call on the Members who are attending remotely, can I ask please, Councillor Galsworthy first, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott Thomas, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For. Carries.
Thank you. And that's complete and that's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 5, Cwmtaf Morgannwg Public Service Board Wellbeing Plan 2023 to 2028. We considered a report of the Chief Executive. I believe the leader, Councillor Geraint Thomas, will be presenting and moving this report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In line with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Public Services Board is required to prepare and publish a local wellbeing plan, which sets out the local wellbeing objectives and the steps proposed to take to meet them. Each PSB must improve the economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being of its area by working to achieve the well-being goals. It will do this by addressing the state of economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being in the area and setting objectives that are designed to maximise the PSB's contribution to the well-being goals. They must do this in accordance with the Sustainable Development Principle. The PSB is required to prepare and publish a local wellbeing plan every 5 years, which sets out the local wellbeing objectives and the steps it proposes to take to meet them. This must be designed to maximise the board's contribution to delivering the wellbeing goals within its area and take all reasonable steps to meet those objectives in line with the 5 ways of working set out in the Act: long-term prevention, integration, collaboration and involvement. This will be the second iteration of the wellbeing plan for the Cwmtaf and the first iteration for the new Cwmtaf Morgannwg PSB to be established in April. If I go to the recommendations, Mr. Mayor, in 2.1, the adoption of the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Wellbeing Plan as outlined at Appendix A be approved. I so move.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Do we have any questions from members? Councillor Clive Jones.
Mr. Mayor, on the corporate plan for 23-28, on page 5 of it, on the right-hand side is headed "Looking Forward," and I quote, "Census data 21 shows Merthyr Tydfil has an ageing population, with projections showing that this trend will continue to increase over coming years. The Merthyr Tydfil's local development plan confirms the council preferred growth scenario, a population increase of approximately 8% to 64,400 by 2031. Can someone answer this query that I've got? Because the census population for the year 21 ending was 58,800, a loss of 1,200 on the previous census. So how does the figure in there of 64,400 equate to the current loss of 1,200 population?
Councillor Clive Jones, can you just clarify whereabouts in the report it is? Did you say Appendix 1?
It's the it says version 1 of the corporate plan. Am I on the right agenda?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon.
That's all right.
Too anxious.
I'll give you a shout to and nobody else indicating? No, okay. No questions from members. Any comments from members? Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on the wellbeing plan and the assessment. The assessment's always hard reading for our area with consistent high rates for most of the criteria data. I do welcome the plan and its effort to mitigate everything under objective 1 and 2. It's really good to see that's been put together. But just to bring things up for members if they haven't been through the full assessment themselves, you know, we have issues we need to put to the forefront of our minds when we're adopting this. It's not just a point of putting the recommendation into adopt. We need to be aware of what's in the assessment and what it's trying to solve. A few things that are pertinent to myself as our mental health champion, such as Merthyr Tydfil having higher rates of premature mortality compared to the rest of Wales, particularly in males. And as a council, we need to be vocal on that issue. We need to raise the bar on in terms of things like that and make sure that we're giving the right support for young males where possible with external services, ensuring that they feel connected with their communities, and we're working on bringing that figure down. But it's not just about young males. The disaggregated data is quite clear. There's an issue of mental health across the board in Merthyr Tydfil. High levels of depression, anxiety, self-harm being reported right across the county borough. And also that there's limited access to healthy food options, physical activity opportunities in certain areas, and that'll play into factors of higher childhood obesity, and all these things will come up in later items of the wellbeing corporate plan that Clive jumped to just now as well. You know, these items are scattered all throughout today's agenda. But I think the main takeaways for me, not just as the mental health champion, but as a collective council, and it won't surprise anyone here, are the massive highlights around the levels of social deprivation in Merthyr Tydfil, which are negatively impacting on the health of the population. The plan and the assessment highlights the need for coordinated responses, collaborative approaches to address these issues, including focusing improving the social determinants of health. And the worry that brings to me is that children and young people, particularly in Merthyr Tydfil, are more likely to experience social and economic disadvantage from these problems, and that'll affect their mental health and well-being as well. So addressing those social determinants will include us tackling poverty, unemployment, poor housing through coordinated efforts with our RSLs, social healthcare professionals, local businesses, and by putting people first, the decisions that we're going to make as a council in the coming year. We need to be reducing our burden as much as we can on the costs on our residents wherever we can. And we need to have a strong focus on promoting healthy behaviours with our young people as well. Healthy eating, around issues around smoking and vaping, which has been present in the media lately, and through targeted interventions with community-based initiatives. As an example, I'll just bring up one thing. We shouldn't be seeing local football teams making complaints that they haven't been able to play games. They've been called off for 4 weeks in a row due to unplayable conditions. This is a recent case that's come up and is quite prevalent on social media, where they're showing that these fields are suitable and being played on, but our assessments are not meeting that criteria and they're missing out. You know, this is something that we want to ensure that we're tackling and we're on top of. Any issues with green spaces should be addressed and dealt with as soon as possible, ensuring our children have physical activities and with their local clubs they can take part in. These are all the things that the wellbeing plan is addressing and that we need to be aware of as a council. So I'm really happy to approve the adoption of the wellbeing plan. I just want to ensure as a council we're meeting those challenges. The councillors and elected members and officers are aware of what's in the wellbeing assessment and the plan, and that we're dynamically assessing the risk of decisions we make as a council in this chamber, ensuring we're not disadvantaging people in Merthyr Tydfil. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jamie Scriven. Councillor Lisa Mitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think just to reiterate some things that Jamie's outlined, I'm Vice Chair of JOSC, and we had an opportunity to scrutinise this and take part in the consultation on the 20th of January this year. And inevitably, they are some of the concerns, queries that we outlined and shared. And I think it's important that what this plan does is talk about working differently, you know, which inevitably has to be done because there are massive undertakings within this wellbeing plan and then following on to our own corporate wellbeing plan as well. And within that, working differently, as Jamie's just outlined, is about improving intelligence across the local authorities, but across all partners, agencies, etc., so that we can not only, as it says, recognise and build on those strengths, but we can also talk about and deal with the challenges that we face across the board as well. So thank you. Happy to support this report tonight. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lisa Mitten. Councillor David Hughes.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just come back to Councillor Scriven's to say that I spoke to the person in charge of when they called off the matches, not the Saturday, last Saturday, the previous Saturday. It was overturned, so the games were allowed to go ahead. I've spoken also to the Director of Neighbourhood Services, and we've agreed to come up with a plan that it's the local referees as well as the council will make them decisions in the coming future. So all the onus is not on the council to call the games off, but also the referee in the Merthyr Football League too.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes. Any other members with comments? Okay, nobody's indicating. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
So while everybody in the chamber is voting, can I go to our remote access members? So Councillor Galsworthy, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Scott Thomas, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And that's carried then, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 6, non-domestic rates, retail, leisure and hospitality rates relief Wales 2023-2024. I just give the members that have declared an interest in this time to leave. Okay. All right, this is to consider the report of the Chief Executive. I believe the Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources, Councillor Andrew Barry, will be presenting and moving this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's the non-domestic rates, retail, leisure and hospitality rates relief Wales 2023-24. This will provide eligible retail, leisure and hospitality properties a 75% reduction to their non-domestic rates, or business rates as some people call them. The support will be subject to a cap of 110,000 across all properties occupied by the same businesses. We do have a background paper from Welsh Government entitled Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rates Relief Wales 2023-24 to support the report with detailed explanation of how the scheme will operate should any member receive queries from local business. Alternatively, and as we've operated through COVID and beyond, should you have any queries, you'll be able to refer to Revenues and Benefits through their dedicated email, which is revenues@merthyr.gov.uk. The potential beneficiaries will be identified through our business rates records, which, as you can imagine, Mr. Mayor, are now extensive following the various grant schemes we've had to administer over the past 3 years. However, there is an application that will need to be completed in this case with a declaration as to how much the applicant anticipates claiming across Wales in case of multiple sites. The temporary relief applies from the 1st of April this year to the 31st of March next. A brief of the scheme details are outlined through section 4 and cover how the relief will be provided, how the scheme will be administered, which properties will benefit, and other considerations such as those not considered to be eligible, the amount of relief available, changes to existing hereditament, property, land or building owned or rented, including change of occupier and the cash cap and subsidy control. We've got Mark Price with us this evening, Mr. Mayor, and we've had so many rate reliefs, grants and the like. I thought before I take you the recommendations, perhaps Mark can contextualise where this sits within that, if that's okay. Mark.
Thank you, Councillor. The retail, leisure and hospitality is in addition to some of the schemes that are already operating as far as business rates are concerned. Excuse me. Those entitled to small business rates relief That is will continue as normal, and those entitled to the mandatory relief, they will also continue as what it was previously. The retail, leisure and hospitality is to fill the void where there's a liability for a business rate payer to pay. So basically what the offering is for those that have got a liability upon application, as Councillor Barry just indicated, the business may be entitled to a further reduction of up to 75%. The funding that have been provided to us by Welsh Government has already been made available, and we're looking roughly about 1.6 million. We're estimating around about 300 eligible properties. The eligibility criteria is highlighted in point 4.3 of the report. Last year, in 21-22, where we paid 253 businesses to the sum of 953,000. We've already received applications, which pending the approval of this report. We've received 130, so about 50% of those that we've already paid last year, we've already had applications for, and we'll be communicating with the others that we believe would be eligible for it upon approval of the application of this scheme. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark. There will be some businesses that don't take this up. We've talked as to the reasons why that is. Some businesses were stung with tax implications previously with grants, and there's a nervousness possibly towards not everybody taking up. So we're not expecting it to be 100%, Mark. We're expecting it to fall a bit short of that. Thanks very much, Mark. We'll take it to the recommendations, of which there are two. 2.1, the implementation of the retail, leisure, hospitality rates relief scheme in accordance with the rules described in this report be approved. In 2.2, sections 47, 1A and section 47.3, discretionary relief of the Local Government Finance Act 1988 shall apply as regards the herediments described above in accordance with the rules described in relation to those herediments. I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item? Councillor Michelle Simmons.
Second in the report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Simmons. Do we have any questions from members on this agenda item? Councillor Darren Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies if I missed it. Obviously, it was alluded to that we've got a lot of data for the businesses now with all the recent grants and grant reliefs that's been administered, and a great job the team did in every instance. Are we going to be writing to the businesses to make them aware of this? And like I say, apologies if I missed it, but you know, if there's a 75% grant available and a business is not aware of it, then obviously it's an opportunity missed. Just, we're going to write to them. Thanks.
The numbers indicated for the previous financial year, is, you know, we're looking probably between 60-65% of those that we believe to be eligible. As Councillor Barry already alluded to, it could be that there's tax implications because there's a declaration as part of the application to section 47 that there's a state aid implication there, and that, you know, there's been noted by other businesses, the grants that we paid out previously and under the COVID regime, that HMRC have actually looked upon them to give that as part of their return. My colleague in Blaenau Gwent have agreed to the similar level of applications for the previous financial year, around about 60%, and a conversation with him today. So we're in the same ballpark figure as another local authority. With regard to the communication on the current scheme, as we've just finished now, we visited, we've telephoned, and we've emailed on a number of occasions. And even in doing that, we've still only managed to attain roughly about 60%. The application that we're looking is for the 22-23 financial year, as what Councillor Barry indicated. Because there's a new rate assessment, a new list have started the 1st of April of 2023, there is still an opportunity for a business to make the application in respect of the previous financial year as well as the forthcoming year. So on that, we will look at, as long as the declaration is made to us upon the application, it will be considered favourably, and we will assist any business that makes the application and ensure that they have the full relief as best we possibly can.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Darren Roberts. Councillor Gareth Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand there's been a revaluation of businesses for this financial year, and as a result, some businesses with an increase in their rate will be eligible for transitional rate relief, which I understand is tapered over a 3-year period. Will they be eligible for the transitional relief in addition to this relief?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's good news.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The transitional relief, I'm currently working on that as we speak. It's been a little bit problematic, if I be quite honest. So the TR, as I refer to it, offers assistance because there's quite a number of businesses that have been adversely affected by the new rates list that have come in the 1st of April 23. I have around about 450 businesses that have been affected in excess of £300 per year. So yes, we'll be reducing the rate in liability and and offering and giving small business rates relief as a matter of course. So the retail, leisure and hospitality will be net of that.
Right, that's good. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth Lewis. Any other questions from members? Okay, nobody's indicating. Mark, thank you for answering those questions. Any comments from members? Okay, nobody's indicating. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Yes, so again, can I ask the members attending remotely, Councillor Goldsworthy, are you voting for, against or abstaining, please?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott Thomas, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. I think we're just short.
We've got a few outside.
We've got, yeah, we've got, yes. I think we've still carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Can somebody call the people that are outside, if you don't mind? Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, agenda item number 7, Statement of Wellbeing and Corporate Wellbeing Plan, acting today for a better tomorrow. To consider the report of the Chief Executive. I believe the leader, Councillor Geraint Thomas, will be presenting and moving this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Get back to normal now. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 applied the wellbeing duty on local authorities. This duty means that local authorities has to work towards the wellbeing goals using the sustainable development principles and involving people interested in achieving the goals. Our initial wellbeing objectives were published in the Council's first corporate wellbeing plan, Focus on the Future, Wellbeing in our Community. This iteration of the plan was approved by full council on the 26th of July 2017. Our wellbeing will be kept under review to make certain they reflect what is important to our communities and align to the national wellbeing goals. The first iteration of the Focus on the Future Wellbeing in our Community was approved on the 26th of July 2000, as I said, as previously stated, and has been revised annually up until 2022. To enable councillors elected in the May 22 local government elections to be involved in development of this plan, the plan was extended for a further 12-month period for 2022-2023. In the current corporate wellbeing plan, the council identified 4 wellbeing objectives. These were best start to life, working life, environmental wellbeing, and living well. At the end of 2022, Cwm Taff Morgannwg PSB undertook an assessment of wellbeing, seeking views of residents living with the Cwm Taff Morgannwg footprint. This process involved communicating and engaging with all residents from all backgrounds and ages. The PSB has drafted a wellbeing plan, which was approved earlier this evening, and will be monitored and scrutinised by the Cwm Taff Public Services Board Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As a core member of Cwm Taff Morgannwg PSB, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council's corporate wellbeing plan will align to the proposed PSB regional wellbeing plan as seen below. Our objectives: an aspirational Merthyr Tydfil focus on learning, a healthier Merthyr Tydfil, a safe and prosperous Merthyr Tydfil, and a clean and green Merthyr Tydfil. In revising and creating the new wellbeing plan for Merthyr Tydfil, the council went out to consult and engaged on 5 new wellbeing objectives, which I stated above. So, Mr. Mayor, if I go straight to the recommendations, 2.1, the council's plan, acting today for a better tomorrow, be approved. 2.2, the chief executive, in conjunction with the leader of the council, be given delegated powers to make minor amendments to the plan to keep it up to date as agreed. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. We've got questions from members. Clive?
Yes, I'm sorry about that earlier. I confused myself, Mr. Mayor. This is on, I got the right page number now, page 97, and it's on the report headed Acting Today for a Better Tomorrow Corporate Plan 23-28. So on that page on the right hand side, under the heading Looking Forward, it says, look, census data 2021 shows Merthyr Tydfil as an aging population, with projections showing this trend will continue to increase over coming years. Merthyr Tydfil's local development plan confirms the council preferred growth scenario, a population increase of approximately 8% to 64,400 by 2031. The last census figures for the population of the County Borough Merthyr Tydfil was down 1,200 to 58,800. So how does that equate to what's in this report with a population decrease, but it's forecasting a population increase of quite a substantial number, 8%?
Thank you, Clive. I think Judith. Yeah.
Yes, so that level of growth was set for an ambitious LDP, and that was based on the mid-year estimates during 2020, which set the population at 61,000. So that's the reason why it was projected to be that. So this summer now we're expecting the next mid-year estimates, and that'll show what the current population is and the trends, which will show us then, are we headed in the right direction for that estimate?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand that you deal with mid-year estimates, but we already know that the census figure is down 1,200, so we already know that. So wouldn't you be able to revise it on the figure that we actually know from the census?
Revise the figure in the LDP, you mean?
Yeah.
No, we can't revise the figure in the LDP. Obviously, it's a 10-year document, so obviously the figures can go up and down. You know, they've gone down, like you say, 1,200. When the next mid-year estimates come out, they could well have gone up again. So over the life of the plan, that's what our objective is for the end of the plan, but acknowledging that the figures will go up and down.
Can I ask a further question, Mr. Mayor, on how you estimate what the population figure is? Frankly, and it's my personal view, I've shared it with a number of other people, I don't believe that the census figures ending 2021 is absolutely bang on and correct. And the reason for that is that, and it's not just Merthyr Tydfil, but people have a tendency not to return the census forms. And I think personally that number is quite high in Merthyr Tydfil. So how do we go about estimating the figure? Because these figures are very important for all sorts of reasons.
So there's a number of criteria taken into account, and there's a number of ways you can project population. As you'll be aware, the Welsh Government estimates for Merthyr Tydfil were quite low. So we went higher than that. You can base it on things like migration. So in migration, out migration, you can base it on likelihood of jobs coming into the area and how many additional residents that would bring. There's a number of scenarios. I can send further information, on how exactly this number for the LDP was achieved and what growth scenario we went to.
I'd be interested to have that information,
Certainly, yeah.
Judith. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going to, let me just find the right item, 5.6. When we're referring to the survey responses, have we got a more accurate figure than just the over 1,000? Just as an idea of how many responses we had.
Excuse me. Thanks, Councillor Scriven. Sean, do we have accurate figures there? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the only reason I ask is obviously because, of course, based on the census figures that we've got, that's just under 2% of the population that have responded. And just in the interest of Appendix 3, it'd be useful if we could also understand where those people have engaged with us, especially for the validity of the information we've got in Appendix 3, because there might be areas where we've had no response, but we've obviously got that information showing what the issues are in the area. If that makes sense. If we could get that as an additional information after this meeting, that'd be great.
Yep, we can circulate that. Yep.
If that's okay.
Yeah, speak. Really, come on.
Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry, I do apologise. We recently had a workshop with the Audit and Governance and the Joint Scrutiny Workshop. And within that, we were asked similar questions like this. So we have actually produced more information other than the 3 highlighted areas was in this report. And they are based on ward areas, and they are based on the information that the respondents back are based on age as well. This is cut up in a number of ways. If you go onto the mod.gov, it's already there, and it's in the information shared hub. If you need information on how to access that, that's no problem, but it is already there for you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I just have to review it again. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jamie Scriven. Sean, you may as well stay there a second, just in case. Councillor Louise Minor-Talks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is in relation to the findings on Appendix 3. So I guess my question is for Councillor Geraint-Thomas. So the findings on Appendix 3, what would people change? So in Feina, Bedlinog and Treharris wards, they all stated improved bus services. What leaders need to hear? Feina, Bedlinog and Treharris all stated improved public transport. So the following bus routes that are allocated the bus service support grants in Merthyr are Service 24, Merthyr to Bonstycyth, daytime, Monday to Saturday, Service E79, Service 79 Lower Valley evening, Service Monday to Saturday, all day Sunday, Stagecoach 79 Bedlinog, and the grant only supports the Treharris Trelewis Bedlinog part of the route. So considering the feedback on Appendix 3, So this is evidence that some of the routes that are subsidised by the bus support grant are also affected. So I just want to ask a couple of questions, like when was the decision made for those particular routes to be subsidised, and who made that decision?
Councillor Geraint Thomas.
I'm agree. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I start, and then I think Alan will come in behind me on this one. Some of the routes, or those routes you mentioned there, they have they are Welsh Government. I'm trying to find the right words for this, really, because they are identified under an appropriate way of going forward. So the way the Welsh Government do it is they've got to be an outlying village that comes into the town centre. Alan will reference, the appropriate documentation. So I'll deal with that one. Thank you.
Yeah, those routes that you made mention to, and they've been in existence for several years now. And as Councillor Thomas said, they based on rurality criteria. So those were the only two routes out of this particular funding source, which is outside of BES. BES came later, and BES is finishing this year. When BES finishes, those two routes will still continue because of the rurality criteria that we were able to access.
Thank you, Councillor Vokes. Any other questions from members? Nobody's indicating. Any comments from members? This is a comment or a question, Councillor Anna Wilders-Price.
Be honest with you.
Well, choose one. Yeah.
If I can just follow up on Louise's question, Councillor Thomas, can I ask you how you see your role as council leader in supporting residents in accessing equitable access to public transport?
I'll give you an example over the past where I supported the councillors in your ward, Councillor Carter and Councillor Lewis, when we had a public meeting in the Collier's Arms during the COVID pandemic, when the bus service was taken away. And one of the things that we did through the bus emergency scheme was to get Peter's minibus service to deliver that bus service up to the bus station that's currently there. And I'm afraid when the BES support scheme ends, so will the bus service. So what I do on a regular basis, I represent the local authority at the Regional Transport Authority, which is part of the Cardiff Capital Region, where we challenge Welsh Government about funding, and also Stagecoach as well, on the service they provide the residents of Merthyr Tydfil. And it's something I will continue to do. And it's not just me, it's all 10 leaders of that authority. And I've got to say, all 22 leaders as well throughout Wales are banging the drum about public bus services, because as we can see, it's not fit for purpose. We're going back, almost a horse and cart, 20-mile-an-hour zones, etc. It's not good at all. So I will keep banging the drum for the residents of Merthyr Tydfil to get more money from Welsh Government and get a public transport service that's fit for the 21st century.
Thank you. Could I ask then that you be willing to share copies of your correspondence and communication with both Stagecoach and Welsh Government since May 2022 up to date, so members can be fully aware of the representations you're making on behalf of Merthyr Council, please?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick comments for me based around the corporate plan, which I welcome, and the priorities and focus of the council. Just two things I want to bring up and just reiterate that we don't lose focus on them. The first one in regards to page 37 on the agenda supplements, and this is around the independent and dignified lives, empowering people And there's some items that are identified that what we'll focus on, but just for Cabinet and for the leader to be aware, I think we also need to include reviewing our policies, especially with our RSLs, and how our common allocation policy interacts with these and responsibilities. I've had a number of cases lately where people do not meet the 12-month criteria to succeed at properties and have been living with tenants that have passed. Where I do believe we could have offered support as an authority and avoided adding to the workload that we've currently got for our housing department. And my experience has been currently is that there's a lot of misunderstanding, and especially around clear policies from our RSL side around discretionary succession criteria. So it's just something I want to bring up with the priorities that we're focused on. Perhaps that can form part of what we're looking at in order to help our housing team and our local members. And the second one is on page 38 in order to look at the support of our economy and recover growth, etc. And just to make a comment, say that we've got to get this right, and we've got to make the town centre a place that we want people to spend money in and somewhere that they will go to. And right now we're in a position where I'm not saying that we're completely failing. There are businesses that will thrive, but there are certainly those that are missing out and are feeling let down. And I'll just give one example. We had a high-profile example in the area where we had the first independent private studio and art gallery in Merthyr Tydfil opening under the name of the Art of Amy on the 2nd of July last year. And there was a lot of hope around this. It had a lot of profile from us as a council that it would support the start of a hub of independent enterprises, that we would repurpose old buildings for a variety of offerings in the Merthyr town. And Amy herself was no stranger to the work of the town. There was work commissioned through the Trade Union Council for the S.O. Davis Memorial Lecture. They went on to do artwork for the Falklands 40th Anniversary Tribute Gallery at Trago Mills, which, as Declan would have attended as the mayor. So Amy was prominent in the community as well, and people were aware of the business. But then 9 months later, on the 15th of April 2023, the shop was closed. And this is due to rising costs and a decrease in visitors to our town centre. The business just couldn't sustain itself due to the state of our town, and with most profit being made online. But it's just something that we want to be aware of. We want to ensure that small businesses, when we're making these ventures and support as a council, that 9 months later they're not falling down and they're having to shut up shop. We really want to get this right. So I do support all the things that you're focusing on, but just want to make sure that we're reiterating that point. We've got to be supporting small businesses as much as we can, especially within the case of Amy's Art. It was unique to the town centre, and 9 months later it's had to close down. So we really need to be right on top of all these things, and I just support all the things that are mentioned within the corporate plan. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. You have to wait for comments now. You've asked for it.
We're doing comments now. Councillor Scriven was making a comment.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So
I do
I think we got
apologise.
a bit confused because Councillor Williams-Price was saying she could do either, but she did ask a question, so then you went on to comment. So I think
Oh, I did-
Councillor
did-
Williams-Price.
All right,
Councillor Scriven
okay.
was a comment, yeah.
Right, comment. Councillor Anna Williams-Price.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. So firstly on buses, Welsh Government, as Geraint Thomas alluded to, has provided substantial funding to support bus companies such as Stagecoach through the pandemic on an emergency basis. They've also set out their vision for a more regulated bus service, but in the transition period, it is clear that all partners, including local authorities, need to work together to support local bus services so that the situation stabilises and that reliability of our local services is secured for the months ahead. So I look forward to understanding further the leaders' representations on this matter. Separately, as a member of the Education Committee, I also wanted to highlight how pleased I am to see this plan recognise the importance of Welsh language and Welsh language education opportunities. I am particularly looking forward to seeing how these plans develop with regards to Welsh medium education at secondary level and the feasibility study that's due to come before full council later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Williams-Price. Councillor Geraint, oh, hold on. If you speak now, you'll close it. Anybody else got any comments? I've just got one. I'd just like to make Councillor Williams-Price aware that Welsh Government had a a bill called the Bus Services Wales Bill in 2020, which they mothballed, which would have probably sorted out bus services a couple of years ago. So I think any delays, I think maybe if you contact the AM as well. So Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to come back on what Councillor Scriven said, really, and I do share his lack of support, not support, but lack of faith, I suppose, in the retail offer that we currently have. I know Alan Owen and the team have really worked hard over the years to support small independent traders when they wanted to set up in Merthyr. But just recently, I was walking through Cardiff, walking through Mary Street, which used to be the main retail shopping centre in Wales. There's not one retail shop left there. It's all cafes, it's all bars, and all the surrounding areas outside of Queen Street, shops are closing. And it's a human habit, really, isn't it? We are shopping online. Let's be honest about it. We are buying online. We're not buying we're not going to the town centre. We're not shopping like we used to. And I think we've really got to market Merthyr Tydfil and get our residents back into the town centre. Please, stop buying online and go and buy and support your local independent shops. Because if we don't, they'll be gone forever. And I hope Amy, will come back at some point. And I know she's a great artist, and we all want to support her and people like her. So I think that's my plea to everybody. If you want a town centre, you've got to get out there and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint-Thomas. Can we take this to the vote then, please?
Can I ask the members in remote attendance? I'll need to ask Councillor Goldsworthy first. I'm conscious that your screen froze during that debate. Do you feel that you heard the debate and that you are able to vote?
No, what happened was there was a bit of a problem. I lost my screen as well. I couldn't hear anything, so I can't vote.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Goldsworthy. So, Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against, or are you abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott Thomas, are you voting for, against, or are you abstaining?
For, Caris.
Thank you. So we're still. Councillor David Jones, now you're on. And that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 8, UK Government's Shared Prosperity Funding Programme in Merthyr Tydfil. Consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. The leader, Councillor Geraint-Thomas, will be presenting and moving this report. Councillor Lee Davis.
Yeah, I just want to check. I work on a project that receives SPF funding. Sorry, I missed it off earlier. I think I need to declare an interest. What's he say? Yeah, okay, thank you.
We just wait a sec. Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Before I start, Mr. Mayor, I think we'd all like if the heating could be turned down a bit. It's quite warm in here this evening. I think we've got too much coal on the fire, to be honest.
I don't think that's something we could do. I think the only thing you can do is put the air conditioning on, in which case it'll be sub-zero in about 10 seconds.
We'll brave it. We'll brave it for a little bit longer.
We're not in closed session. You could open the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just try the aircon? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The information contained within the report provides an update in relation to the shared propensity funding SPF programme for Merthyr Tydfil and the South East Wales region. The report provides an update of the Levelling Up Capital Fund and Multiply programme. The report also provides information in relation to the shared prosperity funding allocated to council-approved themes aligned to corporate priorities. The report highlights the delays in the rollout of the programme by UK government, which have necessitated a reprofiling of available finance. This has impacted upon both the SPF and the Multiply programmes. In the recommendations 2.1, the offer of £26,472,957 £472,957 of UK government funding in order that the Shared Prosperity Funding Programme 2022 to 2025 can be effectively delivered by Merthyr Tydfil be accepted and approved. 2.2, the SPF programme for Merthyr Tydfil is financed by Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council while awaiting formal approval of the credible plan to profile by UK government be approved. Funding be provided up front to internal and external project deliveries, with Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council submitting quarterly claims in arrears to the lead authority be approved. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
Delighted to be able to second this, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Al-Jabari. Do we have any questions from members? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's in relation to one of the recommendations, 2.2. It states there the Shared Prosperity Fund programme for Merthyr Tydfil is financed by Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council whilst awaiting formal approval of the credible plan reprofiled by the UK government be approved. My understanding is that we've been waiting for this decision from the UK government for quite some time. Do we know what seems to be the problem, and are we making representations to the UK government on this issue?
Yeah, can I, do you want me to take that? Yeah, there's been multiple representations about us actually getting the formal offer letter to RCT with the grant recipient body. It's only now that we've actually been told how the money within Multiply is going to be redistributed, because obviously we missed the first year's money. All that's been resolved now.
Right.
So we have still been spending within the programme, but it's in the community renewal projects, which were the pilot projects to start. So the anticipation was that they would continue, but basically we've bankrolled them now until we can claim, and we're now in possession of the offer letter. So since we wrote this report, it's pretty much been concluded.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Clive Jones. Any other members with questions? Okay, Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, sorry to come in late, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, all members are going to be keen to see how this is administered and who benefits from this, Alan. Have I heard somewhere that there's going to be a workshop for members? Yeah, and there'll be a full detailed report for council as well following that workshop.
That is correct. We just literally couldn't fit it in. So we've been to scrutiny and debated obviously in far more detail, and there'll be an offer of a workshop in which we'd like to explore and explain how members obviously can interact with this process and programme over the next 2 years, and how members have a vital role in actually bringing the communities into the programme.
Excellent. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Councillor Darren Roberts. Any other questions from members? Okay, nobody's indicating. Any comments from members? Nobody's indicating. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Launching Officer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start with Councillor Galsworthy. Are you voting for, against, or abstaining on this?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Scott Thomas, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Jones. Yes. And then that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Gives Lee a chance to sit down. Okay, agenda item number 9, Empty Homes National Grant Scheme. To consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. I believe the Cabinet Member for Public Protection, Crime and Disorder, Councillor Michelle Simmons, will be moving this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Empty Homes National Grant Scheme, report author Melissa Clee, who joins us in the chamber this evening. The summary of the report, 1.1 to 1.3, to inform members of the new Welsh Government National Empty Homes Grant, which is the successor of the Valley Task Force Empty Homes Grant, outlining the purpose, scale and timing of the grant. 1.2 to note the in-principle support received from corporate management team to participate in the grant programme launching in April 2023. And 1.3 to seek council approval of Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council participating in the fund and agreeing the council's financial contribution, which the financial contribution is outlined at point 4. Before I take you through to the recommendations, Mr. Mayor, apologies. As we are all aware, the empty private sector homes represent a wasted resource and financial expense both to the owners and the council. They are a missed opportunity for housing and can also cause a blight to communities. Over the last few years, the council has developed many tools and approaches to encourage empty homes to be brought back into use, which have had a positive impact. Most recently, approving a policy to charge 100% council tax premium on Section 12A long-term empty properties that have been empty in excess of 12 months, which came into effect from the 1st of April. As a result, the council wants to be able to offer grant assistance to owners and prospective owners of long-term empty properties. This grant will furthermore support the delivery of the Council's and Welsh Government's priority of returning empty properties into use in the Merthyr Tydfil area. The recommendations are at 2.1 and 2.2. 2.1, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council's proposal to participate in the new National Empty Homes Grant programme be approved, and 2.2, a maximum contribution of a circa 62,000 towards the scheme during 23-24, and a similar contribution towards the scheme during 24-25 be approved. I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Simmons. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
I'd like to second that, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes. Do we have any questions from members? Councillor David Jones.
Mr. Mayor, on page 131 on grant limits, it mentions a maximum grant of £25,000 to include energy efficiency requirements. Have we got any indication of what these energy efficiency requirements are and the potential cost of them?
No, we haven't at the moment. They were involved in the last Valley's Task Force. There was a requirement for energy efficiency, but it was upgrading of windows to UPVC and putting in loft insulation and cavity wall insulation, those type of things.
So I know it's very difficult, but no idea of the cost of them, or even a guesstimate on cost.
No.
Just it would take up potentially take up a lot of the £25,000 grant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor David Jones. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Oh, a question for Melissa and for Alan, really, on the experience of the previous pilot that we had from the Valley's Task Force and how that went. And again, on the back of what Councillor Jones just said, how far, will the £25,000 go in the current climate with the cost of building materials?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because since the first grant, obviously the economic position, both with inflation and the overheated construction industry and market is totally different. So we're not really sure. We participated in the pilot. We were one of the few authorities for 2 years. There was, Melissa will tell us about the take-up. There was very limited take-up, which was quite surprising. But I suppose it relates a lot to the criteria of the grant, because you've got to be the owner occupier of a property. Obviously, it's got to be empty for the allotted time period, but then you've got to move back in and live in the property. So it was quite limited. I think we had less than 20 people, 17 people take it up. Obviously, from our housing need perspective, the grant is great for bringing a limited amount of properties back into use because of the criteria. But we did make representations. I think it was through you, Councillor Thomas, to the Minister over this grant. And could it be modified to bring properties back into use, specifically for rental purposes, to alleviate our housing issues, which we're going to discuss on the next agenda item. But it's just been a straight rollover of the last programme. I don't know, Mel, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, obviously the Valleys Task Force, we run that for 2 years. When initially came into play, we thought that we'd have a much bigger uptake. I think we did receive about 50 applications at the start, but only 17 of them went through and only 14 have been completed. 3 are still, I believe 2 of them have now pulled out and the other one's just going to be a partial one. So since the council tax premium is going up, I have had quite a lot of people interested in any grant funding, any financial assistance that is available. But obviously a lot of people are not aware that the grants are only available to potential owner occupiers of properties. They're not available if people are looking to rent or to sell that property. There is a requirement to live in the property for a minimum of 5 years after the grant.
What we did find as well, Councillor Thomas, is that there's no means test to this grant. So a lot of people access the grant by virtue of the fact they fell into a criteria who would have spent the money anyway.
Okay, any other questions from members? Okay, I've got one just for clarification. First of all, I'd just like to say before I ask a question that if this helps bring empty properties back into use, absolutely fantastic. But I'm just looking for clarification because a resident asked me on the 31st of January whether Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council were participating in this scheme. So I emailed Mr. Clee, and then the following day, then I asked, Jamie Scriven asked Alan if we were participating in the scheme. You said no, so I asked why. So it came back saying that there's a requirement for the local authority to match fund the grants, and at the moment we were unable to commit to this. Now, there was a lot of stuff on Facebook, and we had the MP on the 23rd of February criticising the council for not taking part in it as well, and I believe others did as well. So I'm just wondering, and it seemed to be like a week later then that it had to go to council then as well, mine. So I don't know how we knew this, but I just want to know when and why did we change our minds, and if possible, how did he find out before anyone else?
I'll take that in reverse. I can't answer your last question because I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this from a professional perspective. I'm not a big fan of the grant based on my answers to the last question. But what tipped the balance for us in recommending that it was approved was the council approval of the 100% surcharge on empty properties. So we would have been disadvantaging the residents of Merthyr Tydfil who fall into this category, which would be compounded by the additional charge.
Lovely, thank you, Alan. No more questions from members. Comments? Any comments from members? Councillor Anna Williams-Price.
Thank you. as the Mayor will know, I sit with him on the Regen Housing and Public Protection Committee, and the impact of empty homes on our communities cannot be understated, and something we've debated at great length within that committee. And I'm keen to ensure that Merthyr Tydfil residents have access to this funding in line with residents in other areas of Wales. And I hope members will support this, as in addition to the council tax premium for empty homes, this will move us towards a well-rounded approach to bringing these houses back into use as homes.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Darren Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personally, I'm thrilled that the funding has been made available to the local authority to deliver this scheme. I know it's going to benefit quite a lot of residents. My only concern is obviously with the rising cost of materials, the rising cost of living, interest rates going up, whether residents that are looking to do up their properties will have the means to be able to do it. Obviously, there's no slur on this particular grant at all. This is an excellent grant, but I have got concerns that we may not get the uptake that we want because of people's personal circumstances and the factors involved in obviously doing up these properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments more on the area of caution of how we talk about these things in the public domain. Because from my experience, and Councillor Hughes will remember, because he had to correct me in the council meeting on the tax issues when this was brought up, is that the mainstream media or anything that was being posted was saying that we were participating in the scheme, and only tonight now are we deciding this. So from a public perspective, from my perspective as an elected member, in a previous council meeting, I was under the impression that we were participating because there was a quote from a council spokesperson saying that we were participating in the scheme. So it's just a point to err on caution on how we talk about these things before we make decisions as a council, because to myself, and I know to members of the public, they're already under the impression we are participating in the scheme before we're taking the vote tonight.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor Jamie Scriven. Any other comments from members? No. Okay. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Goldsworthy, can I ask you, are you voting for, against or abstaining on this matter?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott Gibbs, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
Scott Gibbs? No, I think Scott Thomas.
Sorry.
That's twice now that we've had this.
You don't get to vote twice because I've given you two names. Can you just
I'm
tell
for.
me, Councillor Thomas, what you were going to vote then?
I'm for, Harris.
Thank you. Scott Gibbs is somebody completely different. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 10, Housing Service Update, Temporary and Supported Accommodation, to consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. I believe the Council Leader, Councillor Geraint Thomas, will be presenting and moving this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we all remember the try he scored at Wembley those many moons ago, even before he was born, perhaps. I know Susan Stevens and Susan Lewis-Abbott are with us today, and you know, they wrote this report, and we know how hardworking they've been over the last few years, because you know, homelessness has been, you know, it's been a pandemic in its own right, isn't it? You know, throughout around the world, you know, through the COVID period. So thank you for coming here tonight and to answer any questions that we have on the report. The report briefly outlines the increasing pressures on the LA's homelessness service and the challenge faced in discharging the council's statutory duties under the Housing Wales Act 2014, with specific reference to the lack of temporary supported accommodation. The report explains how the council has become even over-reliant on the use of bed and breakfast accommodation, and additional supported accommodation is required to enable the authority to meet the duty under the Suitability of Accommodation Order 2015. whilst reducing its temporary accommodation costs. The report outlines the proposed steps in which the local authority is required to take in order to meet the statutory homelessness duties under the Housing Wales Act 2014, as signed up as part of a rapid rehousing transition plan and housing support programme strategy. This also includes the refocus of the housing support grant delivery plan priorities to increase the broad range of accommodation required to meet the presenting need. I go straight to the recommendations in 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. To develop further units of supported accommodation to meet the local need through the proposed criteria and process outlined with the report to ensure the local authority can meet its statutory obligations be approved. To increase the number of HMOs as part of the aims of increasing the availability of suitable accommodation to reduce bed and breakfast use and avoid costly and timely legal challenges and assist in meeting our statutory duties be approved. To refocus the priorities of the housing support grant to meet the ongoing need for further supported accommodation in offering suitable accommodation and reducing over-reliance on B&B provision be approved. Before I move the recommendation, Suzanne sent us an email yesterday where one of our clients, one of our homeless people in Merthyr Tydfil, has gone through the HMO system and has come out to the other side and give a glowing report, really, of what he went through. So I think if you've all read it or haven't seen that email yet, I advise you to give it a read. So, Mr. Mayor, I would like you to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Simmons. Do we have any questions from members? Councillor Paula Leighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of questions. If this were to pass tonight, what happens if something goes wrong in regards to the HMO side of it? If a resident of a proposed HMO causes trouble, antisocial behaviour or whatever, what happens? And is that person removed from the property? How long will that take and where will that person end up?
Okay, thank you. As you'll be aware, the current HMOs that we have are managed 24/7. Daily, there's a project manager that's assigned to each individual property who will visit daily to check on the service users. If there are any incidents, then they are reported immediately to the manager. Outside the property, there is a sign on each HMO that we currently have, which provides an emergency contact should any member of the public have any concerns. The project manager will then react to that because there are CCTV cameras within all communal areas of the property, and there's also cameras to the exterior of the property as well. When we have had incidents, and they have been very few, then the project manager has been very quick to react to that. And certainly if we feel that that source of accommodation isn't suitable, then we can and do have the power to remove them from that accommodation immediately to something more suitable.
Okay, thank you. One more. On 4.5 of the agenda item 10, it states without direct action to find alternative sources of temporary accommodation, total costs, including security costs for 22-23 are projected to be £2.876 million. What are the security costs for, please?
Sorry, can you just repeat that last part?
Security costs.
Okay, the security costs are in terms of some of our B&B accommodation where we are accommodating more complex individuals. So in 2 of the B&Bs, we do have security in place. In the one more complex is 24/7, in another one is just evenings and weekends.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leighton. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report also has 4 background papers, and one of them is extremely important to this report, and that's headed Protocol for Assessing Suitability of a New Supported Accommodation to Meet Our Statutory Needs. The 5-page report And on the first page, there are 3 paragraphs. The last paragraph, I won't read it all, but the last part of it refers to the flexibility in the legislation around this is likely to be scaled back within the next financial year, and in brackets, no date from the Welsh Government as of yet. Now, I know this report has been delayed at least 3 occasions. So my first question, which financial year are we talking about when it was printed? Was it the last financial year? Or are we talking about the financial year? We talking about next year? We talking about this year or next year?
Okay, that is referring to the current financial year 23-24, and the statement refers to the suitability of accommodation order, whereby Welsh Government have confirmed that they intend to amend that so that B&B accommodation can only be used in cases of public emergencies. No formal date has been advised. It was originally going to be the 31st of March 2023, but due to pressures on all local authorities across Wales, they did agree to postpone it, but we haven't had a new date as of yet.
So that was my next question, because it's quoted here. There's an intimation that the Welsh Government going to determine on this, but they haven't. And we have no idea when that date will come about.
No date has been provided, but if I had to hazard a guess, it will be sometime in this current year.
Right. My third question is in relation to this protocol, because on the second page of it, there's an extremely important protocol as to how you go about purchasing properties, etc. Is there any particular reason why this protocol was not actually printed as part of the report? Because I happen to think that it should have been, and not as a background paper.
Yeah, we've circulated the protocol and report as part of a workshop prior, giving members time to go through and include as a background paper. So we felt it was sufficient enough to have given members the time prior to go through the paper and understand the protocol and then.
Right. I wonder, Mr. Mayor, how many members have read this report, the protocol from end to end. I certainly have, and a number of members of our group have as well. But the second part of that protocol, I won't read the first part because it's talking about the purchase, etc., and what you do there. But the second part is headed, property is identified as suitable for purchase and conversion to an HMO stroke supported accommodation. And then it's 3 dots there. There's a signed assessment is provided to the head of housing within 1 working day. The second one, it states, brief provided for cabinet leader who informs relevant councillor or councillors on a need to know basis on the same day. Could I ask, where is the involvement of elected members in such a really vital and important subject as this?
The reason we looked at this protocol was actually mirroring something that has gone through another department to access a particular property, given the conditions of the housing market and the volatility and the speed, albeit it's slowed down slightly. But over the past sort of 6 to 12 months, we've seen a massive change across the housing market. And following our previous experience where it was becoming, I suppose, counterproductive from an officer perspective, where we were losing properties due to lengthy consultations, which fall far outside of the statutory consultation process, and also went into a level of detail which shouldn't generally be considered as part of any property purchase. We're talking about a joint partnership arrangement without registered social landlord to purchase. It's not that we are not informing our members, so we would inform the local ward members, but it would be done as an information gathering sort of exercise as part of the protocol. Not to delay the process, given the immediacy of the urgent need, I suppose, is the key for us as officers now to progress.
Mr. Mayor, I understand the frustration of departmental staff dealing with this on a daily basis. But do you think that it's right, proper and correct that the views of councillors, 30 of us in the chamber, and the residents where these properties are likely to be purchased, in this case, would not be taken into account? Do you think that that is the right way forward in this local authority?
It's okay if I come in there. The stark reality in front of us, Councillor Jones, is we've spent the last 2.5 years trying to build a stock of community-based supported HMO accommodation, and we failed. We're now clearly not meeting our statutory responsibility. We've had a negative internal audit, and we do for Audit Wales to also look at this subject. We present in this report, and I can appreciate that some of it might be very unpalatable to council and to individual members, but this is our last resort to build up sufficient stock to discharge our statutory responsibility, which is going to be compounded when the legislation changes and we have to empty all our temporary accommodation. And as officers, this is the last resort which we've put in front of you.
But Mr. Mayor, the question is to you. Do you accept that all 30 of us are elected to represent the interests of all our residents? And what is being proposed here is matter that won't come to us or the residents at all. And frankly, I hope the authority is not going to go down this route. But that's a fact. We're here on a democratic basis. And if this is passed tonight, this protocol, that blows it out of the water.
I totally understand what you're saying, Councillor Jones, but as officers, just to reiterate, this is the position we find ourselves in. This is our proposal to meet our statutory responsibility. Obviously, if it's decided and voted on that council does not want to go down this road, then I'd be formally speaking to the monitoring officer and asking your views of how we meet our responsibility, because this is basically our last proposal.
Well, Mr. Mayor, in view of the answers that have been given, I've got an alternative on behalf of the opposition Labour group to move this amendment to alter what's in the second dot on paragraph 2 of the protocol for identification and selection of suitable properties for supported accommodation and HMOs. And it is, ward councillors are consulted on the merits of purchasing properties to convert into supported accommodation / homes of multiple occupation in each ward, so that the views of ward constituents and councillors are taken into account before the completion of any purchase. And that amendment I propose is put as 2.4 of the recommendations.
Thank you, Clive. I was going to ask for a 15-minute break. To sort of members that didn't understand what you were going to say, but I think you said it clearly. To be honest, I think that stands out a mile. So I believe we need a fight.
No, what we need is to be sure that Meyer has got that recorded.
Okay.
You know what the detail is. Yes. So in that case, you need a seconder for the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, is your hand up? Are you seconding?
No. You have an amendment, so we have to have a seconder for the amendment. And Councillor Anna Williams-Price was asking questions before that was moved. So.
Or do you want a second? It doesn't matter. Yeah, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, second. Okay. Right, go to questions.
So questions on
From
the
members?
amendment.
Anna, can you?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the officers in relation to the amendment that's just been proposed. Would I be right in saying, I think I've been a local councillor now for 14 years, and in that time, not just yourselves, but other officers who've been in your position, have approached me and my other ward councillor every single time you've had a proposed property that could be a HMO. And during those times, we've had very constructive conversations in relation to those HMOs, and in some instances even suggested perhaps more suitable properties for HMOs, but weren't suitable then when we investigated further. In relation to this amendment, my understanding in this with this report is that those consultations with us have been counterproductive. Over the last period of time, if you like, over my terms of 14 years, any idea how many HMOs have been accepted by ward councillors that you've consulted with?
I haven't got the exact figure to hand, but I know certainly there's been probably about 30 that have been rejected. That helps.
Yeah, because I think, you know, without, I think there would be a negative response into those that were more positive and accepted as HMOs. And that is the purpose of my understanding of this report tonight. So what I'm getting to is the proposed amendment is going to get us nowhere, is my understanding. Yeah. Whilst we want to do everything in our power as ward councillors for our residents, it's proved you know, unsuccessful, hasn't it? And I think this is why we now need to go down the statutory route. And my understanding from the Deputy Chief Executive is this is the proposal from an audit perspective as well, that we're not fulfilling our statutory duties. Yes? Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Jones said in the protocol, it says that the leader or the cabinet member for housing would speak to ward councillors on a need-to-know basis. Now, I can tell you, I would speak to you on every case that a house would come in the ward, I would speak to you. But we've got to understand where we are. Over the last couple of years, when we tried to buy houses as well, speed is an issue, because if we can't buy them quickly, the market price, the market was so hot that they were gone in days. So we can speak to ward councillors on it, but to go out to speak to residents, the time it will take, we would never buy a house. And as Suzanne said there, you know, there were 30 rejected. There are lots of HMOs, especially around the town ward, but they're not ones that's run in conjunction with the council, they're private. And I think that's what we need to understand. You know, we're in a desperate need for housing in Merthyr, desperate need. And for me, I will be rejecting your amendment, Councillor Jones. But I will say this to everybody, you know, I would speak to every ward councillor that if there was a house or a possible purchase of HMO, I would come to you first.
Yeah, questions now, everyone. Councillor Anjabari.
Mr. Mayor, I think we all share the frustration in terms of where we are with homelessness. The policy has put massive pressure on this authority. We in Town Ward have perhaps more than our fair share of HMOs. Absolutely. I will support the idea that there's a pragmatic approach to consulting with councillors, and I just would like a guarantee that that will continue and recorded here, because I concur with Councillor Mitten. I think we could be going down into murky waters here when we're already in the problematic area. So can we have that guarantee that you will consult with all councillors?
Yeah, as part of the protocol, and you know, I suppose we could make clear, but the brief would be the portfolio member, followed by that information would be passed to the relevant ward councillors, as they would know that ward, and the majority of what we're looking to achieve would also follow with a statutory consultation, which would allow the immediate residents, neighbours, and you know, for whatever planning reason, to consider whether that's appropriate or not. Now that it wouldn't always be the case if it was, for example, a HMO for two units, but anything above that, there would be a statutory consultation followed anyway, following this protocol.
That's from Malcolm Colburn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, can I just ask Alan, if we were to pass this amendment tonight and we then fail to meet our statutory duties as a result of that, what sanctions do we face from Audit Wales?
Well, they are going to run an audit on our response to homelessness, because we've already been told that in our annual planning meeting. Obviously that'd be up to Welsh Government to determine.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from members? Councillor Clive Jones.
In the protocol, I'll read it again. It says the brief provided for the cabinet leader who informs the relevant councillors on a need to know basis on the same day. There's no mention whatsoever in there on the word consultation. So is something being introduced now? Because it's been mentioned, that word. Are we talking about consultation now, or on a need to know basis and be told on the same day that the signed assessment lands on the leader or cabinet member's desk?
The wording would be down as inform, because there would have been an assessment of suitability done alongside this as well. So it would be information at that point in time. However, if there was a valid reason as to why this something couldn't go ahead, which would be agreed by planning as well, then that could potentially stop the situation.
Second question is in relation to that very point. From a planning point of view, these would have to come to planning, and as part of that application, they then have to put notices out and consult. So in those cases, consultations taking place, but it doesn't say anything there in that respect. We are not being, well, I won't go over the question again. We are not being, from what I can see of it, consulted as such.
Councillor Brent Carter.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a very quick question, and I can see the frustrations across the chamber tonight with regards to this report. In terms, just to clarify in my own mind then, we're talking about a need to know basis. What is a need to know basis? Because Suzanne, your idea of a need to know basis could be completely different to mine, and it could be different to anybody else's. So for some clarity, what do you mean by need to know basis in this protocol? Thank you.
So in this instance, I would suggest that that is the elected members within the ward and that the property is situated. But I'd also like to add, you know, as officers, as Susie has already explained, we will go through a process ourselves of scrutinising and identifying whether we feel the property is suitable. So there are certain things that we will consider before we would even agree to progress on the purchase anyway. But, you know, can I also add as well that not only in terms of our statutory duty, but I think we have to remember, and I'd like to emphasise that, you know, we are assisting local people who have a human right to a home as well as the statutory duty. And I think it is quite disappointing of the stigma that is still surrounding the homeless population locally. And I would urge you, if members haven't already seen the video that we recently put out on social media a few months ago now, that really does emphasise how providing someone with a home can actually turn their lives around. So if nobody's actually seen that, I would urge you to have a look at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. So, sorry, I think you lost me halfway through but there then. But in terms of a need to know basis, just to clarify this point, ward councillors are the need to know basis is what you said.
I would say, obviously, we will share the information with the cabinet leader. From my perspective, it would be to inform the members within the ward that the property is situated that we'd actually considering.
Councillor Carter, you finished questions?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, no problem. Any other members with questions? Question? Yeah, Councillor Claire Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Suzanne, out of curiosity, the success rate of the two HMOs, what are you currently at with individuals moving on to get tenancies, please?
I don't have the exact stats on hand, but all I can say is those that are currently in the HMOs that we have, we've probably never seen such a great progression at the moment. Those that are in the HMOs are doing really, really well, making positive steps to the point where they are now starting to engage with our employability and training services as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. Another question as well. Individuals in bed and breakfast, the success rate's quite high with a bed and breakfast as well for certain individuals. And obviously with Marsh House, there'll be 22 beds there. So obviously some of the more high profile individuals who've got issues will be housed there. But you are having success rates within the bed and breakfast with securing some accommodations as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from members? Councillor Clive Jones.
It does seem now from the discussion, because it's not in the product, an officer who's not with us anymore said many times years ago, words are very important. The word consultation with the members is not in this protocol. Are you now saying that ward members, through the leader or the cabinet member, will be consulted on the proposals for a potential purchase? And the reason I ask that question, as I'm sure members here and the mayor is well aware of issues that we've had where properties have been purchased in the middle of a terrace, middle of a street, or propositions have certainly been made. So can you explain to us clearly what is the situation? Will members, because it does say on a need to know basis. So if that has changed in this chamber, it might have a difference as to whether we pursue this amendment.
I think we quite clearly included the word inform because there would be a statutory consultation as part of a change of use of an accommodation. If we were to purchase a supported accommodation, if we were to look at a HMO, for example, then that is where the statutory consultation. Where we have failed time and time again is consultation where it's been lengthened due to delays in responses coming back, considerations around who is going into a property rather than is the area suitable for this type of property. So the clear focus for us is what type of accommodation do we need as a local authority? what have we signed up to in our strategies and policies going forward around the housing support programme strategy, our rapid rehousing strategy? What do we need as a local authority? It's very clear, and Welsh Government are very clear, that the funding that we access should be to meet the areas of greatest need. We haven't been doing so as well as we could have been. So the process would be, we would inform our cabinet member, who would inform the ward members who are responsible for the ward in which we're looking to purchase the property. And any statutory consultation would include a broad brush approach, but we would have a strict criteria. So there wouldn't be a lengthy consultation as we have done historically. As Alan alluded to, this hasn't worked, and we are now under deep scrutiny with audit and failing our statutory obligation to deliver housing and temporary accommodation as we are currently.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, but the word says the cabinet, or says cabinet leader here, who informs the relevant councillors on a need-to-know basis on the same day. The way that I think a number of members have read that is that you'll have a phone call, you'll be informed, there's a potential purchase, and that's it. Because it doesn't say the views of ward members will be sought. Doesn't mention it.
But they would be sought as part of the statutory planning application. So
But that's a different matter, I would suggest to you. And I think that's, Mr. Mayor, that's where the confusion lies. If a planning application comes in, there is a statutory process. But that shouldn't override asking the ward members beforehand what their views are. Because if you're going to put this suggestion here, and I quote, 8 to 10 bed for complex needs, but for larger properties, the conversion would be 8 to 20. And you put those and suggesting them to be put in the middle of a terrace or a street. You know what's going to happen.
I would like to reassure members that there would be a very, a common sense approach in terms of what types of accommodation would go where, and that's why the aside criteria would be looked at. And I would like to stress Suzanne's point again, that we have a statutory duty to house. We have a limited supply of stock, and we will work in the best interest of sustainable communities. However, we need to do something, and we need to do something now.
And Mr. Mayor, I understand the frustration, I really do. But as members you've been contacted over many years know that the situations occurred, correct, I'm asking a question, correct me if I'm wrong, where we've been told that there's interest, we think in the purchase of property, and it's bang in the middle of a street or a terrace, where you put these people who need all the care in the world. If you've got residents either side of them, do you accept that would cause consternation with the members, and I have no doubt the residents? Do you accept that?
I think we have properties now as HMOs, which are in a residential street, and we are setting our homelessness cohort up to succeed and develop relationships within an existing community, albeit it's a shared accommodation. But I think, again, we're focusing on the type of people going into an accommodation rather than we have a duty. These people have a human right, and they are our constituents, and they deserve to be homed. We would always make sure that anything we're doing in terms of, we have a dedicated and very experienced temporary accommodation officer who knows these individuals, who works with them day in, day out, and would do a thorough matching process in terms of who goes where, to make sure that we're setting people up to succeed. It's not in any of our interests to develop something that's not going to work, but we are here to support those constituents of Merthyr. So that's what we're trying to achieve with this process.
Can I therefore ask, Mr. Mayor, the cabinet member, because the words consultation has been mentioned, as to when this is referred to the cabinet member, that the views of the elected members in that particular ward will be sought, yes or no?
I think I've already said earlier that I would come to you as soon as I know that, and your views would be sought.
On that basis, then, could I have that answer that's been given by the cabinet member recorded, please? Yes, I know, but in the minutes, questions asked, and as you know, are not specifically always recorded. But I'm asking for that particular answer from Councillor Geraint-Thomas, please, to be recorded.
Okay.
Specifically in the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Alan, did you want to come in?
I'm sure I was going to say something really profound, but I've forgotten.
No problem. Still on questions, I believe Councillor Michelle Jones.
Because the answer has been given and it's going to be minuted, we will withdraw the amendment, and I look forward, as other members do, to this serious matter being referred properly to elected members.
Okay, that's amendment has been withdrawn, so we'll go back to the original. Will we on questions? Yeah.
Questions on the original.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions on the original? Councillor Louise Minor-Folks, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is in relation to page 136, where you refer to background papers, and I'm particularly looking at background paper 4, page 53 and page 54, where you raise certain projects which are going to be decommissioned, and it's highlighted in 6.4 that the Citizens Advice Service was decommissioned. I just want to ask, why didn't these decisions on such a large amount of money come to full council for decision?
Yeah, that was, I think we touched upon this previously before we resolved the issue. It's an operational, it was an operational consideration in our administration of HSG based on a prescribed grant criteria.
Right, okay. So when you made the decision for projects to be decommissioned, do you have a plan of how those projects are going to be decommissioned?
Okay, just for clarity, there was just one project which we actually decommissioned, which was Citizens Advice Merthyr Tydfil, that has subsequently been funded through the Shared Prosperity Fund. However, as part of the decommissioning process, at the time, there were 545 individuals receiving support from Citizens Advice. When we looked at those that needed to be transferred back to the housing department for further support, I think we had referrals back of approximately about 50 or thereabouts. Obviously, we wrote to those individuals and we had a response, I think it was from about 5 people who have now carried on having support through an alternative provider. So I think we were confident at that time that those that still required ongoing support could be referred to alternative providers.
Okay, I just wanted to ask about, has there been any knock-on effect to the housing solution staff? Because obviously I know you referred to in background papers 1 and background papers 3 about the impact on staff, and I just wanted to ask, any sort of that decommission, has it increased caseloads for staff? Because you say, currently you've got workers there with 30 plus cases. And you also refer to staff experiencing vicarious trauma, which is quite a serious thing for a staff member to experience. And I just wanted to ask, what support is in place for those staff? Vicarious trauma is a life-altering thing to go through. And I just want to ask, what is the resilience to protect the team, please?
Okay, in terms of the first part of your question, the decommissioning of the Citizens Advice, and that would be in relation to housing related support, which is provided through third party organisations. The caseloads we refer to in the paper are actually statutory homeless presentations, which would be something different. But as you rightly point out, caseloads are significantly high at the moment, and they continue to run at those levels, unfortunately. Obviously, we're supporting staff as much as we can, and as a local authority, there's a lot of well-being and mental health programmes being run online. We've also done some reflective practice sessions with staff through our social services department as well. But obviously, we continue to monitor that as we go forward, because we appreciate, you know, that the trauma on staff. Particularly in regards to temporary accommodation officer, given that the level of unfortunate deaths we've experienced in B&B over the last 12 months has been significantly high. So, you know, we do totally acknowledge that the pressures on staff are immense, and we do continue to monitor and support them with issues.
Yeah. Last one, Mr. Mayor, is obviously with vicarious trauma, sort of recommended interventions like clinical supervision. So I just wanted to ask if you could consider that for your team to protect them, please.
Absolutely. It is something that we're looking into at this point in time, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Louise Weiner-Fawkes. Councillor Brent Carter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A few questions. It all centres around 313 of the report on page 135. In terms of the property, Marsh House, am I right in assuming that it's a 30-year lease costing the authority £100,000 a year? Is the first question.
No, it's a 30-year lease, and we are only paying for that lease for the period of the construction programme, at which point for the remaining 29 plus years, it will be transferred over to Merthyr Valley Homes to make those payments. So it would be no running costs to the local authority other than the housing related support element.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Anna Williams-Price.
Thank you. Can I ask how Marsh House was identified as the most suitable location for new supported accommodation, and were any other locations considered?
Yeah, so we constantly look at the availability of properties within the town centre and surrounding areas for supported accommodation. We were quite lucky, but in the form of Marsh House, as it was a former care home, so gave us a scale that we really needed to start making a real imprint into the issues and the numbers that we're seeing coming through our doors. We have looked at other properties over the past couple of years, and none of which would have meant the scale that Marsh House would have. So in terms of similar properties, there were none, and there was a willing landlord and private owner on board to take that forward, and we felt it was exactly right for what we needed to deliver.
Thank you. And following on from Councillor Carter's point, I appreciate your response with regards to the bulk of the lease being the responsibility of the registered social landlord. But obviously, it's a significant amount of money compared to the purchase price of such a property. So was any work undertaken to understand whether purchase of the property was feasible?
Yeah, so we are not purchasing the property. Sorry, I've just got your question now. Yes, we did go in with the ask to buy outright in the first instance, and that wasn't something that the owner was looking to do at this moment in time. It will be something that they may consider at the end of the lease period in partnership with RSL, subject to market value at that time. But it didn't work for the owner at that time, unfortunately. So we did explore the option, and it wasn't a possibility.
Thank you. And just to follow on, obviously, you've alluded, sorry, if not in this report, certainly into scrutiny sessions I've attended on the matter, that multiple locations of this type are needed to meet our future need. So can I just clarify from your initial response that at this point in time, there's no progress in suitable properties for future use being identified?
We're working on, so we're constantly scoping properties. difficulty is when larger properties do become available, the market does move quite quickly in terms of us being able to secure, hence why we're looking at revising the protocol. But yes, officers are scoping now in partnership with our technical colleagues in our partner RSLs to assess the viability of a number of other schemes currently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Sorry, Councillor Braycarter, I know you did say earlier that you had plenty, lots of questions. I do apologise.
No, that's okay. Anna's asked one or two anyway. But just for clarity then, both, in terms of the purchase, and I can understand why the owner of the said property didn't want to sell it because of the financial gain they would probably make over the period of time. But couldn't we have considered a compulsory purchase order?
Oh, I don't believe so.
Why not?
It wouldn't have fitted the criteria.
Okay.
No.
No, that's fine. I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question again is in relation to Marsh House, which is referred to in the bottom of page 135. And it does say in there, plan permission has been granted and work is due to commence in February this year. Unless I've missed it, my colleague, we don't seem to have noticed any sign of any work being done. And we were informed, all members, that this would be ready in September. So what is the timeline for it now? When will this be open and the individual be able to move in there?
Yeah, so the original plan of February was held back due to the fact that when we went out to tender, as with many other developments, the costs came in substantially higher than what we've received a Welsh Government grant for. So therefore we had to revisit the whole viability of the project. We have had to have some really in-depth value engineering discussions with the potential contractors, followed by some identification of how we can make the project viable within the existing budgets that we hold, given the level of priority of the scheme. Those issues have now been resolved. We have value engineered down substantially from what the original tender costs were. The contractor is now on site. They mobilised in March, towards the end of March, and the internal demolition works are starting imminently. The programme remains as we expected, around a 30-week programme. So we're expecting sort of mid-October for the completion of the capital works. And our partners, we're readying up in advance the support provider, our registered social landlord, to essentially transfer the lease the day after the development is completed, sign a sublease with a new support provider, and they would need around a week to mobilise the relevant furnishing. So we're looking hopefully by the end of October.
And you need the staff to support the individuals there. Will all the staff be in place and appointed before October this year?
Yeah, so as part of the reprioritisation of the housing support grant funding, that was why it was really important that we did that urgently. That has all now been complete. The support provider has been awarded the contract, and they are in the process of recruiting now. So the jobs are out, and we are sharing them on all of the relevant websites.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Councillor Geraint Thomas, leader.
Yeah, just a question really for clarity, so everybody understands the position about us buying the property ourselves. And it's to Alan is there would be if we bought the property ourselves, we would be able to get housing benefit, and that's why the RSL is involved. So we just give that for clarity.
Yeah, that is correct. We wouldn't have had any relief ourselves.
Thank you, leader. Any other questions from members? Councillor Clive Tuvey.
Yes, it's one big empty, one building that's almost empty in Merthyr, have you considered? The Welsh Assembly Government building. if I could say, apparently it costs something like £1.8 million a year to run. I don't forget the exact figure, but there's only 26 people working in there sometimes. Now that would be an ideal. It would solve our homeless crisis. Yeah. So should we write to the minister and ask if they'll sell it to us or give it to us? Thanks.
Certainly think so, Clive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Said that we'd only be leasing it for the first year. So why is there £1.5 million worth of investment from the Welsh Government? Because in the report it says that's for the lease. Bottom of page 135, 313. In response to this, £1.5 million of capital funding has been awarded to the authority to secure the additional 22-bed unit accommodation for the lease. Sorry, I've read it the wrong way. It's two way. I've added this. Yeah, my apologies.
Thank you, Councillor David Jones. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Just for clarity, really, Mr. Mayor, the Welsh Assembly bill is 2.6 million here.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any other questions from members? No. Comments from members? Okay, Councillor Michelle Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comment is around the stigma of homelessness. There needs to be more education on this. I think that a lot of people think that homelessness is sleeping on the streets. This isn't the case. It also means people without a permanent home. This could mean living in unsuitable temporary accommodation in hostels, bed and breakfasts and sofa surfing. Myself and my fellow ward councillor Claire Jones have been dealing with residents that have come to see us because relatives that they're living with have passed away, and they are basically told that they need to move out because they can't stay there any longer. This was a young boy living behind me in Heelgerrig. He was living with his nan. He was then basically homeless. So I think we definitely need more education around this. I think people think that a homeless person is a dirty person, an unhygienic person, someone who's perhaps a druggie, an alcoholic, potentially violent, a sexual predator. These aren't always the reasons. We're aware that there's a massive issue with the lack of chronic lack of social housing, because for decades governments have failed to build enough houses. Having a home is a human right, and we must protect this and fight for it.
Okay, Councillor Paula Leighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I take on board everything you say, Michelle, I really do, and I'm all for helping whoever needs the support in this town. I have got concerns regarding the use of the HMOs due to what's happened previously with supporting or emergency accommodation in the Dowes and Pant ward, namely a lack of support when things go wrong. The use of HMOs will predominantly be in high volume residential areas because prices are cheaper there. If this passes tonight and there are issues at one of the proposed HMO properties, those issues need to be sorted out straight away. And unfortunately, previous experience on my part and the councillors of our ward, this has never happened. And I appreciate, Suzanne, what you said earlier about obviously they have got managers in place now and they react to this. But when is that? The next morning? When you've got neighbours and residents? And I appreciate what Michelle said, people need homes, but these people need support too. These old age residents in these streets, or we have experienced, and I don't see anything in you that says they're going to be protected. I read the positive email in regards to the HMO, great. And I do support it, believe it or not. I support a lot of people, but I've also got to stand up for the residents of my ward who have constantly had to put up with, and I will say, drug abuse. No one's saying they're dirty. No one's saying anything like that. Drug abuse, loud music, drug dealing on the doorsteps, revving cars early hours in the morning, and they're intimidated, and we have had to deal with that. So that's my view. That's how I feel. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leighton. Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's fair to say that we've given this a fair debate this evening, and the points that my colleague Councillor Jones made is quite right. You know, we're elected as members to represent residents within our wards, within our community, and we are the ones that residents come to when things go wrong. We all support the need for HMOs. You know, when I've been contacted in the past, I've always looked, you know, quite honestly at whether it's a suitable property and given an honest answer. We do need more properties, and we do need to meet our statutory responsibility on this. However, the concerns that have been raised this evening can't be ignored. Now, given the fact that we've had the leaders' reassurance on the fact that elected members will be consulted with when decisions are made, that's the reason why Clive retracted the amendment, and that we are happy to support the report and the agenda item this evening on that basis. The very second, however, that we are not consulted, then it will be the leader will be held accountable on that with residents, because, as Clive has asked for, it is being minuted, and you know that is crucial. Otherwise, we would have pushed ahead with the amendment. But for this evening, Mr. Mayor, I, for one, am happy to accept the explanations given and the report as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darren Roberts. Councillor Louise Miley-Foulkes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some comments in relation to the HSG. So the fallout to the cost of living crisis leaves every single resident of Merthyr Tydfil vulnerable to its effects. Residents are dealing daily with higher bills, loss of earnings, job losses, businesses closing, threatened with homelessness. Some may develop negative coping strategies with alcohol and substances and develop additional mental health illnesses. Decommissioning services that holistically support residents in our community is a decision that should have not been made by officers in isolation and should have come to full council. Agencies such as Citizens Advice are accredited, offer holistic support and advice, and most importantly, they turn no one away. Once in and accessing support, a full assessment and identification of unmet needs is conducted. Agencies such as Citizens Advice provide information and advice to individuals or households on finances, budgeting, welfare, and any other matters related to accessing and maintaining a home. COVID has been an additional aggravating factor in residents requiring support and has compounded the complexities of their needs and housing. The way in which this decommission has been determined and agreed has not been as transparent as it could have been, and frankly, I feel it's stifled debate. This has been an officer decision made on £500,000 without coming to the chamber for full discussion and approval. Mr. Mayor, it certainly deepened my eyes, and I'm concerned about decisions like this being made again when we are just given an information-only report, which does not enable elected members to ask questions and scrutinise decisions. Pushing the button to decommission key support services will potentially have a catastrophic effect on our communities and will ripple through wards within all of Merthyr. The decision has unfortunately been made. I'm aware that Citizens Advice have secured money from an alternative funding source, which the Labour group campaigned for, so they can continue to offer advice in our community. However, this has now changed the shape of the organisation and the support they can provide going forward. The allocation of the HSG grant needs to be a full council decision in the future, and I hope that going forward, agencies...
Councillor, I think you're veering off topic, to be honest. Yeah.
It's not relevant to this report. This is a report about something else. So unless you have something to say about this report, can you please move on?
I'm sorry, Monitoring Officer, Mr. Mayor. This is relevant to the report. It's referred to in the background.
The Mayor has made a decision.
Yeah, I think the monitoring officer has given advice and said, I do apologise. You obviously feel strongly about this, but if this is veering off course and it's not what's in the report, then I don't think you can go forward with your comment. Sorry, Louise. Councillor Claire Jones.
Thank you. Can I just say, first of all, thank you ever so much for the report. I first-handedly, as many of you know, volunteer with the homeless, and I take my hat off to all of you working there because I've seen the struggles you've had, I witnessed first-hand when we went into lockdown, what you had to do, and you're just amazing. You know, here I go, trying again. they're used to it, but I just feel that the stigma, it is real, you know, and I've just got to say that Easter weekend, I dealt with a 1-month-old who's homeless. You know, you're not only looking at adults, you've got children as well. And I sit here and I just take my hat off to you all. Thank you ever so much. You know, thank you. I see the success stories, you know, and I think a lot of that has been maybe ignored tonight. I do agree with certain comments that have been made, but unfortunately, some of the HMOs are not under your jurisdiction. And this is the problem. When they're not under our jurisdiction, what can we do? I really don't know. And, you know, I'd welcome anybody to answer that question, what we can do. But when it's not, a bail bond is not under our jurisdiction and things like that. So I just want to say thank you ever so much. Sorry for crying, everybody. But, you know, just please educate. I think that's the big thing is education in amongst this as well. And I'm going off topic now, so I'm going to be quiet. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor. Claire Jones, Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be short, and I want to agree with Councillor Paula Leighton on the comments that she's made, because there's been similar experiences in my ward. Clearly, for properties where the intention is to have 8 to 10 beds, or as it says in the protocol, 8 to 20 units, there needs to be safeguards and assurances. Our registered social landlords will supervise and monitor these units. They have an obligation to monitor them properly. I think what our experience has found is that when things kick off on a Friday night or a Saturday, these people who need support from the staff not always there.
Thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment just to thank everyone, the officers, elected members here, and the leader for the resolution we've come to, specifically around the amendment, because it is a sensitive topic for a lot of people around the room for different reasons. And I understand all the comments being made around the stigma around homelessness and everything that's being said. And I guess it's difficult. What we're trying to do is try to uphold democracy in some of the decisions being made. I guess that's where the amendment came from. And I know that Clive was very thorough in his pursuance of questions, and he went on for quite some time. But yeah, just say thank you to everyone for coming to a resolution, because I do agree with what Councillor Leighton is saying as well, because when things do go wrong, we just don't want to be in a situation as councillors, and that's for all 30 of us, where we have to say our hands are tied, it isn't within our power, or we weren't able to challenge of an opinion on the decision. I think that's where we're coming from on this basis, and we don't want anything to hinder that democratic mandate we've got as members sat around the room, because otherwise we might as well have a bureaucratic process. We might as well just leave it all down to officer decision. I think that's what we're trying to enforce, is make sure that there is a democratic mandate, and we make sure that we're saying as councillors we're involved in that process. So I do thank the leader for his clarity on that. And of course, as I said, there'll be a responsibility on you then, Geraint, if things are not upheld in that way. I certainly don't want every member in the chamber to be sending you reports every other week from members if that is the case. In regards to Michelle's comment around the case of the young boy who lived with his nan, I totally feel you on that. It's something that we've got to address, and that's why I brought up within the corporate plan looking at that succession policy, because I've dealt with countless issues around that now where we're having those things happening, and that's exactly why I brought it up with yourselves under that item as a cabinet, to ensure that part of the corporate plan looks at how we're working with RSLs. We've got a non-stock policy, where we're not stockholders as an authority, so our RSLs need to look at that succession policy, especially around discretionary succession, to ensure whether situations like that don't happen, they don't put extra stress on those residents specifically, like in your case and many cases I'm sure others have dealt with. but also that it's being looked at in the right way and it's the best interest for our housing team so they deal with things appropriately and also for the residents affected. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jamie Scriven. There's only one person indicating, and if I bring him in now, it's going to close the debate. So I've got something to say. Okay, I've been a councillor for 6 years, and I've got as many open housing applications as anyone else, I'm sure. And I fully appreciate the difficulties the housing department in Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. I completely understand it. I'd like to say, Michelle, your words are inflammatory. I hope to God you don't think that anyone voting against this tonight thinks that the homeless people are dirty and are not worth anything, because that's not what people think. Not here anyway. Inflammatory language, I'm afraid. And I've got to agree with Councillor Paula Layton. I've been burnt in the past. Been called Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. When we needed the help, there was none there. And that goes for recently as well, last week. Okay, Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I knew this report would have a good airing tonight, and the team have been under quite a lot of scrutiny, really. I've been asked a lot of questions, but they've always come up with the answers, And I think over the last 4 years, we've learned a lot in the housing section, especially through the COVID years, where Welsh Labour government policy was to get people inside, and we totally supported that, and we did get everybody inside. Now it's a case of we've got to get everybody into appropriate accommodation, and very quickly. And then there's the rapid rehousing on top of that. So I think we have to support it. This is only right. We have to get people into the homes that they deserve. It's a human right, and they deserve them. So I'm glad, we've had a great discussion about it tonight. I do have faith in our housing team. Lessons have been learned over the years, and I know going forward, they're there. They're there at the drop of a phone call. If we want something, they're there. So yeah, thank you for a real great debate tonight. I think it was. So let's go to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if everybody could vote, please, I will go to Councillor Galsworthy. Are you voting for, against, or abstaining?
Well, unfortunately, my screen has collapsed again, and I couldn't see all of it. So I better not. I'd better not vote.
Thank you, then, Councillor Galsworthy. I'm sorry about that. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, are you voting for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott Thomas, are you voting for, against, or abstaining?
For, Carys.
Thank you. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 11, Flying Start expansion phase 2B access to free childcare. We considered a report of the Chief Officer for Social Services. The Cabinet Member for Social Services, Councillor Julia Jenkins, will be presenting and moving this report.
Sorry, is it on now? Am I on now? Yes. Okay, this is the Flying Start expansion phase 2B access to free childcare report. The report authors Chris Hall and Sarah Osler. Members will be aware of the previous expansions of Flying Start programme, with this being the third expansion of the programme since July 2022, with each expansion progressively incorporating areas with the highest percentage of children living in income-deprived households. Upon approval of this report and subsequent to Welsh Government agreement to this expansion, only 6 lower super output areas will not be eligible for access to free childcare. Therefore, the summary report 1.1. The purpose of this report is to agree the phase 2B expansion of Flying Start childcare across the county borough. This will provide an additional 76 children at age 2 to 3 with access to free childcare each year from the proposed lower super output areas. However, these children and their families will not benefit from the full Flying Start programme offer due to the approach taken by Welsh Government to this phase of the expansion. And 1.2. Report also provides an overview of a recent consultation exercise into future commissioning arrangements for childcare. The proposed approach from the 1st of April 2023 would ensure equity across all approved providers, reduce the funding of unfilled spaces, and will fund provision on the basis of actual children who are booked to attend at the rate of £16.61p per session in 2023 to 2024. Before I go to the recommendations, Chris, is there anything you need to add?
No, I think in terms of the overall of the report, and keeping it brief, what in terms of the commissioning approach, you know, we have done quite a wide consultation and had face-to-face discussions with providers. We are aware that there's a provider in the County Borough who doesn't want to move to this, and they are the only provider, but it's working successfully with most of the other providers across the County Borough at present. And the £16.61 figure has actually gone up in the last 2 years because Welsh Government have increased the rate of childcare monies that they pay to the local authority. So that's benefited the providers. And actually moving away from the original commissioning would see this provider gain more money on a per child basis. So, you know, it's a bit disappointing that they don't want to move to that, but we do have alternative options available to the authority. And the speed of expansion, I think, is challenging. That's the only thing I would say. We have been able to do it. And we've looked at it, and we've looked at it on the basis of there are a number of children who are already accessing provisions where parents will now see those childcare places paid for, which has enabled us to make the speed of transition that we have at this point in time. But probably the next stage of the expansion, the last element, will probably be the most challenging, especially in terms of developing dedicated Welsh language provision because of the lack of Welsh-speaking childcare workers and the amount of time it takes to get people qualified. That's the main elements of the report, really.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. So I'll go to the recommendations. 2.1, the expansion proposal set out in 5.5 be approved and the expansion plan required by Welsh Government in Appendix A be submitted. And recommendation 2.2, the proposal to adopt a single approach to Flying Start commissioning of childcare, purchasing places per individual eligible children and removing block bookings is approved and implemented from April 2023. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Julia Jenkins. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item, please?
I'd like to second that, please, Chair.
Lovely. Councillor David Hughes, thank you very much. Any questions from members? No, okay. Comments from members? Oh. Councillor Gareth Richards.
It's a question for Chris, really, on the outstanding areas, Chris. I appreciate you said they'd be challenging, but any idea when the 6 areas which are outstanding will come within the scheme?
At the moment, Welsh Government haven't given us a timescale on the further expansion, but then they've been rapidly trying to take this progressing. We've already had some information from Welsh Government that they're just waiting for us to push the button on phase 2B tonight in order for us to say yes and make all parents eligible to access, because they've had draft report from us previously. I think in terms of the 6 areas that remain outstanding, what I will say is that we still have an outreach capacity within the programme, which will allow us to have families coming in from those 6 areas for those in highest need based upon health visitor assessments with the children and the families. So we will have some capacity to deal with it. But at the moment, my guess, if you ask me to guess, I'd probably talk about September for the next phase of expansion from Welsh Government, but I can't give you a guarantee on that.
Good, Chris. Thank you.
Councillor Gareth Richards, is you finished? Yeah. Yep. Lovely. Thank you. Any other questions from members? No. Any comments from members? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Chris has learned his lesson tonight in terms of if you bring a paper next time, make sure it's before homelessness.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Nobody indicating. Can we take this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Galsworthy, can you tell us whether you were voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs, can you tell us whether you're voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, can you tell us whether you're voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For.
Thank you. That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Okay, agenda item number 10 to deal with any urgent business or correspondence. I have one. This is important. It's come via Louise at Safer Merthyr Tydfil. Important information for domestic abuse victims. This Sunday, the 23rd of April at 3 p.m, the government will be sending an emergency to test all phones and tablets in the UK. Please note that the information provided by the government is that they do not need to know your number or location, so all numbers and devices will be sent to these. This test will be siren-like emergency warning system in Welsh and English. The emergency test could reveal a secret or secondary phone and place victims at risk. Please ensure any emergency or hidden phones are on airplane mode or switched off. This is further information relating to the alert at gov.uk/alert. Please make contact with local support services such as Safer Merthyr Tydfil's domestic abuse team if you need to discuss your concerns about this alert. They can support you to ensure that any secondary phone that you have remains covert and that you are not placed at further risk from this government emergency test. And I believe that's been shared on social media as well. It's quite everywhere. Okay, agenda item number 11. To receive communications from their worship the Mayor. I have a few, sorry. Oh, is it? All right, okay. 30, sorry. Right, I'm delighted to share with you that we have received some awards over the past month. The council was awarded Build Act accreditation, the first local authority in the UK to achieve this. This allows us to continue to develop our work in relation to positive behaviour support. Trained officers are able to continue training and to deliver specific training related to this area. Next one, the National Association of Able Children in Education, NACE, has named Troy de Rue Community Primary School a 24th school in Wales, 156th overall, to be accredited for the second time with the NACE Challenge Award. The award is given in recognition to school-wide commitments to high-quality provision for more able and talented learners within the context of Challenge for All. You might see this in front of me. I didn't win this. I don't think I've ever won anything. But, except my better half. Right.
Go on.
And our Employability and Children's Services team took gold in the IESE Public Sector Transformation Awards 2023 Customer Focus category for the Council's Pathway to Work project. We did have them into the Mayor's Parlour as well. Fantastic guys, and what they're doing is absolutely fantastic as well, and may they keep it up. Right, I'm going to have to get some help in this. I can't pronounce the Welsh. I do apologise.
So Poedaderwen has become the first English medium primary school in Merthyr Tydfil to achieve Siarter Iaith Silver Award. Siarter Iaith is a Welsh Government initiative that encourages schools to promote the use of Welsh language, improving skills and inspiring children to use Welsh in all aspects of their lives.
Paris, I'm glad you did that and not me. Okay. Finally, I'm sure we'd all like to wish the Merthyr Mexican, Gavin Gwynn, all the best in his British Lightweight Championship bout on Saturday night. And yeah, and that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been eventful, emotional, but let's stay friends, everyone. Okay, and I'd like to declare this meeting closed. Thank you.